Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Nice. I met a few of you guys on the way in. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us this morning. Are you guys enjoying United so far? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just curious. I'm trying to get a feel for the room. Who in here has been shooting anywhere between like 1 and 3 years? Okay. Cool. And maybe like 3 to 7? Okay. Like 7 to 10? Cool. And anyone 10 over? Awesome. Okay, I was just trying to get a feel. So my name's Catherine Guidry. Just like he said, I'm New Orleans based and huge lover of Show It. Super excited to be here this morning. I'm joined by my husband Brad in the back. So say hi to Brad. This is Brad's first United, and I'm thrilled to be talking about posing. I know in the intro he said marketing your brand. I don't know how that happened, but we're talking about posing this morning. As you guys know, with photography, posing is so important. I am a firm believer you can have the most beautiful location and the most beautiful light, but if your couple looks uncomfortable or unnatural, they're probably not going to print that photo and they're probably not going to like it. So during this presentation, I'm going to be talking about posing. I'm going to be giving you guys just some general tips for how I work with clients and create just a flow and a comfortability with them. And also, when I'm working with a client and posing them, how I work through a flow, essentially a series of poses that I can do in 5 minutes, or if I'm given an engagement session like 1 to 2 hours, then of course I can elaborate on that. So feel free at any point if you guys are confused or have a question, jump in, and at the end we'll have questions as well. Initially I had thought I would do a giveaway through Instagram, but Andrea informed me that we have review cards. So if you're interested in doing a 1-hour portfolio review with me, I'm happy to look at some images, maybe some galleries of yours, and I can give you some advice on how to up-level your images. So at the end of the talk, you guys will just fill out your review card. Andrea will collect them, so Andrea's back here, and then I'll pull one and we can work together on a portfolio review. Okay, so I want someone to volunteer for me really quick. Anyone who just is, oh, right in the front. Okay.
I don't want to, but like I will.
Thank you. And I appreciate your honesty. What's your name?
Shelby.
Shelby, I'm Catherine.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, all right, so Shelby, I want you to stand over here, right in front of that line, just so you can be in the Show It video. Face towards me, and then scoot this way a little bit. Okay, come forward in front of the line. There you go. No, you're good. Okay, now I want you to act natural for me. Okay, all right. Can you act more natural? Okay. How do you feel right now?
Really awkward.
Right, okay. All right, so my point, and thank you, you can have a seat. My point in showing you guys that is when I first started shooting, I believed that when I saw natural poses that I would have to tell my client to look natural. I was like, okay, guys, I want y'all to stand over there and just do your thing. Just look good. And they're like, awkward, right? So ironically enough, if you want to be good at posing, you have to be quite specific. And I'm talking down to their fingers, down to their hands, down to the positioning of their head. If you want your clients to look natural, you actually have to tell them what to do. And what happened over the course of the years, so I've been shooting, I'm one of the 10 plus years, I shot my first wedding in 2008. I learned that clients love when you're very specific with them. They appreciate it. I think clients come into a session and they're really nervous. You know, for some people it's the first time they've ever been photographed. And at the end of the session, I love to ask them, guys, what'd you think of today? And they're always like, it was actually easier than we thought. And I'm like, okay, well, why is that? And well, you told us what to do the whole time. I don't want my clients to think at all. In fact, the more they think, the more nervous they get. So I tell them exactly what to do at all times, and I encourage you guys to do the same. So what is posing flow? So I actually have a flow, a series of poses that I go through when I'm posing a client. And ironically enough, I do the same thing over and over and over again, sometimes in a different order, but I have like a catalog of poses in my head. And these are things that I've developed over the years, maybe from experience, maybe from inspiration, and you just sort of like memorize them. If you're a beginner, if you're in that 1 to 3 years, maybe you carry along like some pictures with you, and if you have a little break, you can reference previous images you've taken, or I'm actually going to be sharing at some point with you guys some of my images that if you'd like to use for reference. You're welcome to. But they're poses that you're repeating and that you understand. And I wanted to say repeated and understood because I really believe that in order to truly positively execute a pose, you have to really understand it all the way down to does her head need to be slightly higher, or does it need to be a little closer to her groom? So you want to really understand and repeat your poses. The catalog is done for specific reasons and in a specific order, which I'll talk about during the presentation. So you're not going to want to take your client from like an engagement pose where they're sitting down to then they're walking and then, oh wait, let me go back to sitting down. You know, try to keep it memorized in your head in somewhat of a cohesive order so that they don't feel all over the place and also you don't feel all over the place. We have a lot going on when we're photographing a couple, especially if it's on a wedding day. We're already dealing with lighting, location. Maybe the wedding planner's rushing you because you don't have a lot of time. Maybe the couple's over it. And so your control is your poses. You want to go to your poses and know that, like, I know how I'm going to pose this couple. You want your poses to be very fluid. So I'll show you some side-by-sides, and on the front, the very first screen you may have seen, it was kind of like a fluid flow. But you want to be fluid so you can say like, okay, I'm going to take the wedding party from smiling, looking at me, okay, then they're going to lean in towards each other, and then maybe I'm going to do one when they're looking at each other, and then I'm going to have them walk. I'm not going to take them from walking to leaning in, you know, kind of have like that flow to the poses. So over the past few years, I've been mentoring people, and these are some of the things that people have shared with me, and maybe you guys can identify with some of these sentiments. I know I definitely have felt this at some points in my business. I'll look at my poses and say, oh, that looks awkward. So these are some of the things that I'm hearing as posing concerns. My poses look awkward. I have a hard time coming up with poses on the spot. So maybe you're feeling like, oh, I'm super rushed, I can't think of anything, or I've got 2 hours to fill, and like I'm running out of ideas. When I'm rushed, everything falls apart and they look rushed in the image. How many of you guys, raise your hand if you've been in a situation where you've had less than 5 minutes to photograph the bride and groom on a wedding day? I know I have. I mean, if it's a winter wedding and they got married at night and they didn't do a first look, and then all of a sudden you're expected to create magic in 5 minutes. And that's really why I wanted to put this presentation together today, because I'm going to show you at the very end a couple who the groom was over it. He literally gave me 5 minutes, and I was able to create 20 solid images for the couple. All of my images look the same. My sessions are taking too long because I'm overshooting. And this is something especially, just another poll, I'm curious, how many of you guys shoot film? Cool, and how many of you guys shoot digital? Awesome, so I shoot a little bit of both, and I think that the thing with digital is that you're shooting so quickly, right? And you're like, they call it spray and pray. I'm just gonna spray and pray that I got something. When you have that catalog of images in your head, then you know that you're not gonna overshoot, because you know at the end of their first outfit, if they don't even do a second outfit for an engagement session, you're like, okay, I've got my bases covered. I've got the paper pose, well, I'll talk about that. I've got the pose where they're looking at each other, the pose where maybe they're facing the front and the back. You kind of know you have your bases covered. So this was some images that I took 9 years ago, and I wanted to show them to you to show you that your style can change and your poses can definitely change. It's a little embarrassing to show your old work, so you're welcome. Here's me being vulnerable for you. But you know, I just wanted to show you guys that I also came from a place where I wasn't in control. I was always trying to come up with new poses. My clients were very much telling me what they wanted to do, not what I wanted to do. I remember the couple on the left, bless her heart, she was very assertive. And, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I remember we were shooting with this airplane. She's like, I want to stand on the wing and he can sit on these suitcases. And, you know, I was like, okay, whatever you want. And so looking back on that, I remember that feeling of feeling out of control. It wasn't my session, it was theirs. And I do believe it's still their session. But I believe now they're coming to me because they've seen my work and they're like, I want a Catherine Guidry image. So I don't care if I'm doing the same poses over and over again. In fact, they want that. They want to know that if they saw an image they love, when they come to me, they're going to get that same image of them with their fiance or their husband or wife. Really quick question. Does anyone know where I can like keep track of time? Sorry to interrupt the, like.
I can do that.
Okay. Just let me know, like, I probably should have put a little timer up here, but I know Show It wants us to keep on track of time. So maybe just let me know when it'll be like 15 minutes.
Every 15 minutes?
No, just when we have 15 minutes left. Okay, sorry. And I wasn't confident in the poses or sure of myself. And I think that's a very hard place to come from as a photographer because, you know, your clients are coming to you as the professional and they're looking to you because they don't feel sure. You know, when we're being photographed, we're nervous. Like Brad and I, we get photographed about once a year just to put us back in that mindset. If you're not being photographed once a year, I highly encourage you to do so because it puts you in the place of the client and then you realize the things that you may or may not be doing. But that's kind of where I was 9 years ago. So this is where I am now. And these images are paired side by side intentionally. I wanted to show you two brunette brides, both Caucasian couples, both in an outdoor area, and I even paired the poses on top of each other. In one session, I'm delivering about 75 plus images. So one couple will probably receive around 75 images. Of those 75 images, I try to create a lot of variety. The couples are never going to see their galleries side by side. And I love when I get mentees who come to me and I show them two galleries. And I'm like, I'm not trying to redo what's working for me. I've figured out those 75 to 100 poses that really, really, really work. I'm not going to show you all 75 today. That would take a really long time, but I am going to show you some. But I wanted to show you that over time, you're going to start to develop these poses that you really understand and that you repeat. And that's okay. Because of those 75 photos, you may be posting only one on Instagram, you know? And I don't care if their galleries look fairly similar because I'm posing poses that I feel comfortable with. And based on the couple, I do make adjustments, which you will see as well for height or maybe things that they're self-conscious about. But now I'm establishing control at the session. I'm feeling confident in creating images that they'll love over and over again. So a little back history of me and how I came into becoming better at posing. I actually went to school for architecture. So I never studied photography like in school or anything like that. And I say that because I want you to know that you, no matter what background you came from, if you're self-taught or if you studied photography in school, that you can become better. You can be better with practicing. So I kind of just like ran the numbers, and over the course of the past 10 years, I've photographed over 1,000 sessions and weddings. And so you think if you shoot 300 digital photos at an engagement session or a portrait session, that means that I've clicked the shutter over, Brad and I did the math last night, like over 300,000 times. And if you figure you're doing 3,000 clicks of a shutter at a wedding, you know, that could be up to like 1 million or more. So that's a lot of practice, a lot of posing, a lot of getting better at understanding how to talk to people. So don't ever be discouraged if you feel like you're not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm still getting there. You know, I'm still working on getting better. And I think the same of all of us in here. So just get better, keep practicing, and observe what you're doing. So what is posing? Posing is the act of showing someone the desired position in order to create their image. And I wanted to say this because Brad and I have had our photos taken quite a few times. And I am a pretty firm believer that you should either demonstrate the pose or verbally tell them what to do. If you're gonna go into the client's space, personal space, then you should make sure you're asking permission. I know Brad's like really weird about people touching his face. He won't even let me touch his face. And so I think if we were being photographed and someone came in and just started doing like this, he would freak out. And if they asked him, if they said, hey, do you mind if I like move you? He'd say, yeah, that's cool, just don't touch my face. And you know, brides all say, hey, do you mind if I fix your hair? Before I do. And if they're like, yeah, girl, like absolutely, then I feel cool about it. But if I ask them, even if they say, yeah, you can touch my hair, and they like start twitching, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not gonna touch them too much. But I wanted to really talk about that because it's kind of condescending, really, if you're going up and moving the client like they're a puppet. You should be using your words and your body to show them, okay, look, bend that leg, lean forward, bend your arm, turn your head a little bit, and actually mirroring what they're doing. Not only should you physically be mirroring them, but we'll talk about this, you are their mirror. They can't see themselves. And so everything that you're showing them and everything that you're saying, they're relying on you to better them. So why is posing important? If it's awkward, they won't like the image. You should be the client's mirror. It determines how natural or comfortable an image looks and feels. And most importantly, it affects how the client feels while taking the photos. If you're confident, they're confident. One caveat to this, though, I wanted to point out is that the client may feel awkward. If you're telling them, stick your chin out, bring your chin down, lean towards me. They might be like, oh, this is awkward. But what I do is after I kind of get into the mode of the session, like maybe 10, 15 minutes, I will, if I'm shooting digital, flip and show them the camera. If I'm shooting film, I might even bring my digital just to show them how they look. And what happens in that moment is they trust you. And that's what you want. You want your clients to trust you because you're confident, you're telling them what to do, and you're even showing them like, look, you feel awkward, but look, you look good. And that's the best moment when they see that on your camera. They're like, oh, okay, cool, I'm good. I was feeling kind of awkward, but yeah, these look really great. We trust you. So when you start a session, I'm not sure how you guys start your sessions, but for me, we either start one of two ways. One, if they show up and they're wearing comfy clothes, we go through their outfits together. So I'll tell them, bring your favorite 3 to 5 outfits. We'll pick your top 2. If they need a little help and guidance, some clients are very confident in their outfits, and so they show up dressed. But either way, I'm not gonna let them show up and then let's dive right into shooting. I always take a little bit of time to start the conversation. So on that walk to their spot or while we're sorting through outfits, I'm asking things like, so have you guys been photographed before? Are there things that you liked or didn't like about that past time that you were photographed? Is there something that you're self-conscious about? Are there any poses that you like or don't like? And you'd be surprised. If you ask your client before you start shooting, you will prevent a lot of aftermath of people emailing you and saying, I really don't like these photos because, or I really wish we would have done this, because you've asked on the front end and you're honoring their wishes. People are very conscious of what they do and don't like about themselves. If someone doesn't like their profile, they'll tell you. And if somebody says, I don't like my profile, what I usually say to that is, okay, cool, I'll definitely keep that in mind. We may do a few profile shots, but I'll try to keep wide photos whenever we're doing that, so we're not super up close. Or if someone says, I'm really self-conscious about my arms. Everyone's self-conscious about their arms if you're a female. It is just what it is. And so my job is to then assure them, hey, look, don't worry, I got you, boo. And look, there's always Photoshop. So even if I don't really Photoshop my images, to be honest with you. I pose them in a way that looks flattering. But by me saying that, they already feel comfortable. It's vanished away their fears. And I wanted to point out this couple in particular. I chose this photo because I actually wouldn't typically show a photo like this on my Instagram or my portfolio. This couple was a little bit unique in the sense that they came to me and first they wanted studio portraits, which was super different for an engagement session. And then they were like, we really aren't the PDA type, so we want to have our photos just be really chill. We're just super chill people. We want to be walking, not, nose to nose, kind of intimate type photos. And I said, no problem. What we'll probably do is I'll probably get some photos of you guys looking at each other, but I'll be shooting them more quickly. So I would have them walking and say, okay, Whit, look over at Brandon. And she'll look over him and I'll snap it. Or I'll have them maybe hugging, looking at me, and I'll say, okay, really quick, just look at each other. And I'm ready and I shoot it. I'm not gonna have them holding the pose, but I'm still getting a variety of images for them. So I'm asking about their favorite or least favorite poses, and then just keep in mind that I might show that here for a presentation just to acknowledge, but you don't have to show every photo of every couple. Okay, so we're gonna dive into some general posing tips. So the first one is to find out if they're self-conscious about anything physically. I always ask, do you have a favorite side? This is a very simple thing, and most women have a favorite side. I have a favorite side, and some men have a favorite side. If they have the same favorite side, you let them sort it out. I don't get in between couples. And constantly talking to your clients. This is the biggest thing I notice when I'm mentoring people. We'll take turns, so I'll shoot and then they'll shoot. And I notice when they start shooting that it sounds like this. So I'm shooting someone. Okay, yeah. Oh. That's awkward. There's no sounds happening. When you're shooting someone, you should say, okay, Whit and Brandon, you guys come together. Great, hold that for me. Oh, guys, that looks so good. Keep holding it. Whit, lean back a little bit. Good, Brandon, lean into her. Good. Oh, you guys, that's hilarious. Love it. So good. Talking to them, saying good things, saying encouraging words. They want to know that, A, you're still shooting. Otherwise, if you're shooting film, they're going to look at you and you're going to be shooting like you're wasting money because, you're taking a picture and they're looking at you. Or they start to relax in the pose. You need to tell them, good, hold it. Whit, bring your shoulders back. Awesome, good smiles, guys. That looks so good. I mean, literally when I'm done after shooting an engagement session, I get in my car and Brad will call and I'm like, I don't even want to talk right now. I've been talking for 2 hours straight. So constantly talking, letting them know they're doing well. Be assertive. So if you see they're looking uncomfortable, don't just think it in your head. Don't just think, oh, that looks awkward. Instead, you need to tell them. They don't know what you don't tell them. And then they're going to get their photos after and they're going to say, oh, why didn't she tell me my hair was like this? Why didn't she come and push it back or tell me to push it out of the way? So it's hard, guys. I know we're thinking about a lot of things when we're shooting, but you need to be super assertive and let them know and be encouraging. Like I said, Brad and I were photographed about once a year. And I get it. Like, we're not going to do everything right. But the worst thing to hear is, that doesn't look good. Or, well, kind of, but just keep a little bit more to the side. No, you need to be encouraging. I'll talk about a few more rules, but when I'm not going to BS them either. I'm not going to say it looks good if it doesn't. But if they do something right, I'm encouraging them. And if they're not, I'm going to say, oh, that's really good, but just a little bit higher. You know, so that they feel good. You want your clients to feel confident while you're photographing them. And I'm a firm believer there should be a cap on how many adjustments you make before you take the photo. So even when I'm shooting film and it's going to cost me money, I'm okay with it if I know the pose isn't exactly right, because I want them to feel like they're doing good. And if you say, okay, turn and face towards me and hold hands, okay, bring your hands forward. Great, okay, Whit, turn in a little bit, bring your left hand over. Brandon, put that hand in your pocket. I want you to just sit in that left leg, Brandon. Okay, wait, bring that foot forward a little bit. Okay, Whit, turn in more, bend that left leg, lean in. At some point they're like, well, dang, we're not getting it. So sometimes I'll be kind of halfway through and I'll say, oh, that looks so good, hold that, boom, shoot it. And then I continue to work through it until I feel like I've gotten the image. And I do that to lift them up. They're going to get to the pose, but the more you tweak and tweak and tweak, and if they're not getting it, they're going to feel discouraged. So it's to keep the momentum going, keep that flow going, keep them feeling good. And never, never, never say, no, that's not right. I was shooting a session last week, and she was really cold. It was a cold day, and she sat on his knee, and I was taking a photo of them, and I just wasn't feeling it. Like, I just couldn't get it. And so instead of saying I didn't like the way they were posed, I was like, you know what, guys? This backdrop is really busy. Do you mind if we move somewhere else? And they were like, no, yeah. They don't know what the backdrop, you know, they're like, yeah, that's fine. But really, I wasn't digging the pose. I wasn't digging what was happening. And so I would never tell them that, though. I would never say, this isn't working. I would just say, I really don't like this backdrop, or I don't know, there's just too many people around, let's move. I'll think of something to move them so that they don't know that it's the pose that isn't working. The more vulnerable you make yourself, the better that they feel. So if we're in the middle of the French Quarter and I'm posing a bride and I'm asking her to do something that kind of makes people look at her, like maybe I'm asking her to twirl around, I'll do it. I'll say, okay, Megan, I want you to take your dress and I want you to twirl around and look at me and then look down at your dress. Or maybe I'm walking, you know, I'm doing the pose so that they're like, oh, well, if Kat can do it and she's still alive, then I can do it and it'll be fine. And don't be afraid to show them. So in posing flow and in your posing catalog, it's okay to do the same poses over and over again. So like this bride, Jennifer, she's posed here with her best friend. And I wanted to show this photo because for her, it's the only time that she will do this pose where she's hugging her best friend, smiling and looking at the camera on her wedding day. If I was getting married and I had seen this photo of Jennifer, maybe I was one of her bridesmaids, I would say, oh, well, when Catherine shoots my wedding, I want the photo like this of me and my best friend too. And so I think we get in this mode of feeling like every time we have to do something so different. But really, like, it's their one time. It's their one wedding. It's her chance to get her photo with her best friend. And so keep that in mind, that it's okay to do some of the same poses over and over again. Another general posing tip. Again, I see this a lot with kind of like newer photographers and, you know, sometimes even with my photos. Notice their hands. So when you're looking at your couple as you're posing them, make sure you're looking at them as a whole, but also paying attention to their hands. I think that's one of the biggest giveaways. Even that session I was just talking about that was really cold. I mean, it was cold, trust me. I was very cold that day. But she was walking like this. Now, if I catch her mid-stride and she looks like this, It looks like she's nervous or uncomfortable. And so I kept reminding her, hey, Kendall, just relax your shoulder and relax your hands. I know it's cold. I'm so cold too. But you won't be able to tell it's cold in the photo. So just relax your hand. And if you have a couple who's holding on to each other and she's gripping him or he's got his fingers interlaced behind her back, just say, hey, Brandon, do you mind just unlocking your fingers and just softening your hands behind her back? That looks so pretty. Or, hey, Elizabeth, whenever you put your hand on his shoulder, just soften that hand. You know, there's such a difference in hands, or the difference between holding onto a rail versus barely touching it, or putting your hand on your face versus just relaxing it. Those subtleties in the hands are so important, and they really say something about the image, about the feeling in the photo. If a couple mentions that they might be nervous for the photo shoot, suggest they bring along some Veuve. Why not? Maybe you start the session at a cocktail bar. I've done this too. Don't go somewhere like, in New Orleans there's this place called the Carousel Bar. It's really dark. If a couple's like, I'm really nervous, we kind of want to start with a cocktail, I say, yeah, that's totally fine. How about we go here? Or maybe you bring a bottle of champagne along with you. And it's a cute little photo. Sometimes people use this for like a celebration photo, save the date or whatnot. And it's great for the groom. They love, love, love whenever we can pop a bottle open and they can have a cocktail. And then they can walk with it while we're visiting. You know, the engagements are an experience. Posing flow isn't just about the shooting. It's about the experience. It's about how you're talking to the client, how you're interacting with them. Are you showing them a level of comfortability so that whenever they leave, they're like, dang, that was fun. We love our photographer. And they're recommending you to all their friends because their images are good and so is their experience. If you feel like you're getting stuck, another little tip that I've learned is in between outfit changes, don't just get on Instagram. I find myself even still sometimes wanting to just like leave the session for a moment, but try to stay present. What I've started doing is when they're changing outfits, again, if you're shooting film, I know you can't do this, but if you're shooting digital, go back through your images. See what images you've taken, what images are missing, which ones work for them, which ones don't. Sometimes I'll even be flipping through the photos and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that the groom has this kind of like halfway smile. You know, he has like a smile like this and then a smile like this. And so I'll even show them like, hey, Michael, I don't know if you noticed, but you have two different smiles. Did you know that? He's like, what do you mean? So I say, look, see this photo and then you see this photo. Do you like one smile better than the other? He's like, yeah, actually I like this one better. Say, okay, cool. So how do we get to that smile? And he's like, well, I guess I probably just need to smile bigger. I'm like, yeah. So whenever we go to shoot for the remainder of the session, I want you to think about that smile so that you really love your photos. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of like review in between the outfits and make the second half of their session even better. Because during the second half, like they're tired, maybe you're getting a little tired, it like rejuvenates you and it makes those images even better. Posing should be adapted to the specific couple. So height is one of those factors maybe you've kind of come into. For example, this couple's the same height. Like I wouldn't maybe want to pose him behind the bride with his arms like over her shoulder. I actually did that with my brother and his wife are the same height, and when I was photographing them I had him wrap his arms around her and then I was like, oh no, this doesn't really work. So there are certain poses that you want to not do or do for different couples. So this is a situation where the bride is much shorter than the groom, like probably about a foot. And in the image on the left, you can see that very clearly. And, it kind of makes him slouch over, and then she's having to, like, arch back really high. And so when the couples have, like, a big height difference, I try to use maybe some props, like architectural things, like the steps here, to put them on the same level, or I'll have him pick her up. So that's always a cute photo. Our photographer had Brad pick me up for our engagement session. I about died. If they're the same height, don't ask him to pick her up. But when they're different heights like this and she's clearly itty bitty, I'll be like, hey, pick your girl up. Or in this one where she's standing on the steps and giving him a kiss on the cheek, that's a really cute little image of them. Or they're sitting side by side. If there's a big height difference, whether he's taller or she's taller, it's nice when they can sit side by side. This is an example where the bride is taller than the groom. So in this photo on the left, you can see she's got a couple inches on him. She mentioned at the beginning of the session that this was something that she wasn't necessarily self-conscious about it, but she said, I do want some where maybe we're the same height. And I said, okay, yeah, no problem. So Got some of those where we can see their height difference. And then I had her take off her shoes. So the waist up shots are really great. She can slip her shoes off and she can bend down a little bit. So they can be face to face and then again seated. So this works really well because they can sit side by side and you can have her kind of scooch down a little where their faces are really close. Or in the image all the way to the right, he's actually seated a little bit above her. So if I wanted to shoot that full length, I could, and then even a close up, he'll look taller than her. So you can kind of play with the architecture around you to influence the outcome of the final photo. Kind of going back to what I said before, if something isn't working, don't hesitate to scrap it and move on. That's something that took me a while to learn. I would like fight through it, you know, like, no, we're gonna get this photo. But now I'm like, if it's not working, it's not working. And that's fine, just move on. Your posing collection is something that is developed over the course of time. So not just with the bride and the groom, but maybe even moments throughout the wedding day. So this was a moment with the bride and her dad, but it was actually posed. So I had shot a wedding about a year before this one, and the bride and the dad were actually looking out the window at their venue, and it was one of my favorite photos. It was like the cover photo on my website for a little while. It was so pretty, and so I was in the car with the bride and her dad for this wedding, and they were just like sitting. We weren't doing anything. We were waiting for us to do the first look. And so I said, what if we did a photo of you guys looking at the venue? Like, would that be okay? And they were like, yeah. And then, of course, they're looking at it, and they're laughing, and they're talking, and so I snapped it. And it was posed, but it's still a memory for them. They'll remember looking at the venue and being in the car together. And this is such a cute photo of Jennifer and her dad. She even commented after the wedding how much she loved this image. But it's because over time, you're cataloging these images that worked well, so that the next time you shoot a wedding, especially like I did this one wedding where the groomsmen were walking to the church, and I ran across the street and I did like a photo of the whole church with the groomsmen walking, and it was very simple. So the next time I shot that wedding, or even another wedding where the groomsmen are walking from their getting ready spot, I'm like, oh, let me try and get the whole venue with the groomsmen walking in. It's just a really cool little photo that I've cataloged in my brain. So we're gonna dive into my 5 like go-to base poses. They're very simple, very straightforward, and they cover my bases for every single wedding. If you guys want to have access to this, you can just go to this website here. I'll give you guys a second if you wanna snap that. Okay, so the first pose is my paper pose. This is like the obvious photo everybody knows they're going to take. Everybody knows they're going to do the smiling looking at the camera. So I start with it first. I do all my formal poses in the beginning. A few little things though you'll want to adjust is making sure the groom's shoulders are turned out a little bit, making sure the bride's turned in a little bit. If his arm is stretched too far, have him bring it back. Shoulders back, nice and relaxed. Okay, so I'm going to shoot that one super close. If she is not holding a bouquet, I have her hand on the outside. That's another thing, like where does she place her hand? Always do it nice and relaxed on the groom's arm, and then I can see her ring, unless her favorite side is on the other side, in which case we do that. And then full length. So a lot of times when you're shooting, it's like you kind of get locked into a composition. But don't forget to like go in and out, especially if you're shooting with a fixed lens, and maybe like move around a little bit as well. And then very easy, pose number 2, looking at each other. They're already holding on. The only adjustment is I have them adjust their body. So now they're gonna turn all the way into each other and then bring each other in. And make sure that the groom's fingers aren't interlocked. Maybe the bride lifts her arms and relaxes the one that's in the front. Or maybe she keeps it nice and low. And I'm gonna shoot that close up and full length. The next pose is going to be the groom kind of telling her something in her ear. I say, hey, Bonson, just whisper in Jennifer's ear something there. And Jennifer, I want you to have your head turned toward Bonson, eyes down, chin high. That's important. A little tip I heard at some point, I don't remember where I picked this up, was to make sure that the bride's nose isn't blocking her lips. So you want to lift her head high enough to where the shadow line from her nose is above her lips. Okay, and then same thing with her eyes. You don't want them to where they're like almost closed. You want them to almost look closed. So say it's going to feel like you're looking at your cheeks. That's what I tell them. And then have their faces really close. And then sometimes I'll do her looking down or smiling at me second. And then after their poses where they're holding on to each other, have them face towards me, walking. And then within that, you can do looking at the camera, looking at each other, him looking at her looking at him. That's 4 poses. Then you can get a horizontal shot. And then you can get her perspective and his perspective. So within each movement, try not to overdo it. Try not to go to a million locations. Try not to go to a million different poses. Create a flow as you're shooting that allows you to get a lot of images in a really short amount of time. And then the fifth one that I always make sure that I get is something from the back. So brides love the back of their dresses. You definitely don't want to forget this one. And I'll get them looking at each other and then her looking at her over her shoulder looking at me. So again, if you want to get access to those 5 base poses, which I think you guys already took some screenshots, you can get that here. I'll give you a sec. Awesome. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So a few more things. I just wanted to show you like kind of 4 images that I took in order for their engagement session. I'm not going to take them from like say this one, this pose all the way here and then back to this. I'm going to do a close-up, full length, looking at each other and then turn them into each other. And as you like I don't shoot in exactly the same order every time, but I kind of just know like what poses I can get within which arrangement so that it kind of flows through one another. This is that same session from earlier, again, just kind of flowing through the poses, maybe some smiling at the camera, looking at each other, and then some walking. Whenever I first started shooting sessions, I remember there was this place called Jungle Gardens, and you would drive through it, and we must have stopped at like 40 locations for an engagement session. My engagement sessions would last like 3-4 hours. And now they are 2 hours max. That includes the outfit change, the time that it takes for us to go through their outfits at the beginning, and any time for us to wrap up at the end. So I know 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock every time, that's it. Within that general location, I allow them to choose one spot. If they say, oh, well, can we go here? Can we go to Audubon and French Quarter? I say, you know what? Actually, I would love if we could just choose one of those and then work within. A, it creates cohesiveness with your gallery, and B, it allows me to use the best light. If we travel within that session time, then unfortunately I'm going to be using some of that good light to go from location to location. That's something that I'm sure some of you guys are faced with too, like people asking you to go to a million spots. Just say, look, this is the light that I need, and your gallery will be more cohesive. It'll look more like you were on a date day in this spot. So yeah, just some more examples of different images in one location, like a faraway shot, a close-up, and then looking at each other. And when I start a session, I'm always doing the formal stuff at the beginning. So the smiling, looking at the photo in their formal outfits. And then at the end, maybe we're doing some running through the trees and him picking her up. I do that intentionally. I want their looser, flowy outfits when they're most comfortable, and their formal, stiff outfits when they're most nervous. I'm not gonna and actually that photo on the right is one of my favorites. I love this image, and that's the type of photo I probably would post. Like, I don't post images like this on my Instagram, but I get it for them, and I get it right when we start for all the reasons that I've talked about. And then as they get more comfortable, I move them into the more flowy, informal, fun poses. So again, they did an at-home session, and she was like, oh, I love this chair. I said, cool, yeah, you guys go sit in it. And then within that little series, I got them 4 different images. A little close-up of them looking at the camera, one that's like a little detail of her ring, one where they're looking at each other, and then one where their dog ran up and they're playing with them. So just keep in mind, you want to make sure you're photographing from all sides, front, side, back, especially if it's a wedding day, and I'll show you another example of that. And here's another kind of arrangement of different poses. If you glance at this, you're like, oh, those images are really similar. And they are, but to the client, they're very different. Because when they're going through the gallery, they're going, okay, so this one is full length and you're looking at the camera, and that one we're both looking at it and we're smiling. Oh, well, that one I like because you can see my whole dress. Well, this one is kind of sweet where we're like turned into each other, but I'm kind of serious there. Now I'm smiling. This one we're kissing. This one she's looking at the camera with a kind of a soft expression, and this one she's smiling. And I shot all those in a matter of 3 to 5 minutes. And here we go. This is an example of, you know, a wedding day. You just want to make sure you get all sides of her dress. She's gonna love you for that. And I break this up. So if I know I have like only 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna make sure that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna spend 4 minutes, 5 minutes shooting from the front. I'm gonna make sure I get a few of her from the side and then some of her from the back too. If I have a full 60 minutes, which is very unlikely, then of course I'll spread it out even more. Okay, so this is the session or the wedding that I was telling you guys about at the very beginning, where the groom was like over it. He only gave me 5 minutes. He was really nice, but I knew he didn't love photos. And so I got them 20 solid images that they can use to print. So straight on, these are like the classics, you know, where you can see her full dress, you know, her bouquet high, her bouquet low, close up, and then turned in towards each other. This is like the one you see at your parents' house, you know, that classic image. And then I have them looking towards each other, close up, full length, her perspective, his perspective. Can y'all tell I'm a very analytical person? But you know what? They love it. This is a wide, pretty shot of them kissing. Something like this, maybe they'd want to print in their living room. Maybe I post on my Instagram. Maybe it's a timeline piece. And then I have her facing straight on. So especially with the structure of her dress, I'm like, okay, it's really going to be important to show that waistline, the top part of her dress. So I have that really pretty one of them straight on. He had some cool suspenders. So I have one with his hand in his pocket, and then some where her head is on his shoulder. I have them walking through the trees, looking at me. Then I kind of sway to the side so they're not looking at me, looking at each other. And then they're still walking. I'm just swinging around, getting some side photos of them, and then some from the back. These took maybe 5 minutes. And you know what? I'm good. Some of my couples love photos. I have a couple this weekend. I think we're doing like an hour of portraits. So it's very, very, very unique. And we have a couple of locations, and I'm so grateful for that. But most of the time, the brides are really excited, and the grooms, they're doing it because they love their bride, you know, and a couple people are nodding their head. I know you guys know what I'm saying. So it's really important to establish your posing flow, something that you can go to every time and know that you're covering your bases and getting the images that you need for them. And then if you have more time, awesome, you can do that as well. I think really quick too, I wanted to show you guys, actually, hang on. So if you wanted to get like those go-to images of mine, you guys can access that here and just keep them on your phone. Like, I don't care. You can reference them. You can reference them whenever you're shooting if you guys would like to do that. And then I'm also just going to show you guys one full engagement session really quick too. Okay, hang on just a second. Okay, so this is that engagement session that I showed you a little sneak peek of. So this is kind of what they would receive as a full gallery. I'm just going to kind of scroll through that. So I would say we probably have about 35 to 40 images within each outfit. And within each outfit, I'll do 2 to 3 different locations. So this is kind of her first outfit. We'll do some of just the bride, just the groom, and then they switch into their second, more casual outfit. There we go. So you guys can see they're given a lot of images and images that can give some variety to them as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed Posing Flow today. I hope this helps you in your posing with those general tips and helping you create your own posing flow. I hope the ones that I've given you will be helpful. And if you guys have any questions, you are welcome to contact me on Instagram or email me. If you guys want me to look at a photo of yours, you can use the hashtag #PosingFlow. And Andrea is going to collect your review cards, right? And if someone is interested in doing a 1-hour portfolio critique with me, I'll have Andrea pull one, and I'm happy to do that with your images as well. And does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So the very top images on that engagement session that you had, they were up on like a banister almost, but it almost looked like you were at level with them.
Yes.
How Is that possible?
Okay, so I can fly. No, that's just luck of the draw. So she asked how was I on the same level. It's just set up that way. So there's like a wraparound balcony, and I was just across from them at same level. And that's a very important thing to point out, because if I couldn't get level with them, I would probably maybe do one photo. It's just not attractive to photograph someone from below.
And it's
So
also really hard if you have to like hold your camera up.
yeah, and if you have to hold your camera up. So yeah, that was a good question though. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Have you ever had a client, like, I don't know, notice that you use the same like form of photos or poses and like say like, oh, I'm just gonna do like.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it does challenge me a little bit. So she said, if I'm doing a lot of the same poses every time, do I have a couple say that they want something different? Yes. That couple, Whit and Brandon, was a perfect example of that. Their whole session was something different than what I usually do, because they were like, we don't really want romantic photos, and we're very like chill people. And so it really did rack my brain a little bit. But it really was just me getting an understanding of who they are, talking with them, walking with them, and just seeing, like, sometimes if I'm talking with a couple and I see that he'll do this little cute thing where he like kisses her on her temple while we're talking, I'll be like, oh, that's so cute that he does that. I'm gonna get a photo of that. So just observing them and like maybe a mannerism, or there was one couple I photographed recently where I noticed every time we crossed the street, he held her back. He held her lower back. And I thought it was the cutest thing. Like, he just guided her everywhere. And so I said, hey guys, I want y'all to walk across the street, and just like you do, I want you to guide her back like that. I want to document that. That's just so unique to them. And so I think it's just kind of observing and getting a feel for who they are too. So not everyone is like this formula that's exact, but it's almost just like having a comfort, a control for yourself that you can like deviate from. Yeah.
Whenever they change outfits, do you try to kind of do some of the like basic poses in all the outfits? Like, how do you?
Yes.
So you keep kind of doing some of the same poses in different outfits?
Yeah, I try to like change up some of them, but like the smiling, like the paper pose, I'll always make sure I shoot that one in both outfits. Some smiling, looking at the camera. As much as we don't like those photos, they want those photos. You know, Brad and I, like I said, we do shoots once a year. If we don't have any photos of us smiling and looking at the camera, we actually did do a shoot like that recently, and I was like, gosh, I kind of wish we had some just of our faces, like some good portraits of us. But yeah, I will repeat some of the photos in the different outfits for sure. Yeah.
Have you ever run into a situation where it's very obvious the bride has a very different perspective of what she wants in the groom, like isn't willing to go, like how, like you mentioned it was a 5-minute people, but
Yes.
is there any other way you can like ease them?
Yeah. So her question was like, if I've ever been in a situation where the groom's perspective is different than the bride's. Yes, I definitely have, and it usually requires a lot of me encouraging the groom, like, oh, Brad, you look awesome. Like, Brad, you are killing it. You know, I just lift him up a lot because she's fine. She's content. I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about him being happy at that point. So yeah, I just try to appease or say, Brandon, I know you do not want to do this photo of you holding your wife because it might come off, but for her, can you do it for her? And he's like, yeah, I can do it for her. You know, they're getting married to that person. They'll do anything for that person. It's not about me. It's just like reminding them that they're doing it because they love their spouse. Yeah.
Do you have any, I know we talk about encouraging them, being
Yeah.
very positive. Do you have any go-to like phrases for direction? Like specific things?
Yeah,
Maybe like a couple of things that you like to direct them?
I do.
It's good and doesn't sound like, you know.
I do. And some of them are kind of like developed over time, but like one that comes to mind is I love this pose where, especially when the bride's a little shorter than the groom, where she'll like snuggle up to him and she'll like turn in and he's kind of facing toward me. And for a while I'd say, okay, turn in toward him, and like I'd say, wait, go back, keep going back a little bit more. And so now I just say, make a boob sandwich with his arm. And she knows what that means. You put his shoulder right here and you snuggle up to him, and it makes him laugh. So I have developed some little trips, and y'all can use that one. You're welcome. It'll make them laugh, and they know exactly what you mean. So yeah, I definitely have developed some little like phrases that'll be like quick.
You don't sound so like bossy, like do this with your hands.
Yes.
Something that, you know, is a little more relaxed.
Yeah, and like in between, I'll just make little Like I'll say, okay, Brandon, like put your arms around Whit, like, oh, not that low. Just little things that'll kind of make them be like, okay, Or I'll say, did y'all practice this at home? Just different things that I'll help lift them up, or like go to a straight pose like the boob sandwich, yeah. I saw another question, I think, over here. Is that, oh yeah?
Do you try to change it up between engagements and weddings, especially with the same couple, as far as posing goes, or do you tend to stick to the same?
Well, for an engagement session, I had them for 2 hours. So they've gotten a ton of images, like 75 to 100 photos of different poses. On the wedding day, I have maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Honestly, like it stinks, but that's probably the average amount of time. So I'm really not trying to be creative, like too creative, unless I'm given a lot of time. If they've done some of the same poses, I actually like that I've shot their engagements, because before their wedding, I've reviewed their session and I know which poses look best and they are comfortable. But yeah, I usually review their session and I'm like, okay, yeah, like for the couple that weren't super romantic with each other, I actually re-reviewed their engagement session before their wedding, because I wanted to remember what poses I had done, since they were like a little bit different. So yeah, I will use some of the same poses, and they don't mind because they look different. They're in different places, different lighting. Posing's the control. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you have posing suggestions for a couple where she's quite a bit taller and they are not PDA people and don't want to touch each other either? It's like kind of like this one where I was like, oh, this is a little bit more challenging. So
yeah. Wow, I was faced with a couple recently that they did not want to pose, y'all. Like, it was a struggle bus. Even Brad and I, because Brad will shoot with me on occasion, like after the wedding, I was like, oh man, like every time I'd pose them, they would just start talking, or they'd like fall out of the pose. And my best advice is just that they know who they are. They were at the session, just like you. And I think you do the best you can with what you're given. But if they're a certain way, like if they don't want to be affectionate, instead of like hammering it home and like forcing them to do something that's not who they are, I have enough of that in my portfolio. And in that situation, I'm like, you know what? I just kind of they kept letting go of each other's hands whenever I'd say hold hands. And so I was like, you know what? That's who they are. That's probably what they want. And if I get a photo of them just chatting and they're not like holding on to each other, I think that's okay. You know, because it's who they are as people. And actually, this was interesting because Brad and I, we just worked on a quote love film, was what the videographer wanted. And I was like, Brad and I have been together for 10 years. Like, we love each other, but we don't really need like a love film. And so he asked me at one point to lay down on the sofa with Brad. And I was like, you know, I don't even know if I would like use that part of the love film. Can we just maybe sit next to each other? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. So I think it's okay. We would like that better. We would like that as the couple better than if we had laid down. So just kind of let them be who they are, you know? Be you, but then like let them be who they are. Yeah?
So how do you work with a couple before the wedding, planning photos for them? How much time do you tell them doing that? Or couple portraits?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. She asked, like, how do I plan for the photos? If you are not having a discussion with your couples before the day to create their timeline with them, with or without a planner, I highly encourage you to do so. It's very important that you guys are informing the timeline. I try to get as much time as possible, minimum an hour and a half for formal portraits. If they're doing a first look, ideally 2 hours. If they haven't done a first look, then I just make the photo list and I'd say, hey, I'm gonna shoot for 5 to 10 minutes with you guys. So, but yeah, you definitely wanna be talking with them in advance of the wedding and making the timeline. Are we okay on time, Andrea?
Yeah, it's like 11:29. It ends at 11:30.
Okay. Okay, all right, one more question.
Yes. So for like an engagement shoot, for example, if you know that there's something that, you know, maybe the bride or the bride doesn't like that she does with her face or like her arm, and you're noticing it happening over and over again, so you have some images that do have that, but it's a really great shot. Do you still deliver those, or do
No.
you try to not deliver anything that they have stated that they don't like?
Yeah, I wouldn't deliver it. If I know it's something that they don't like, I had a groom recently who he locks out his knees, like he's like double jointed or something, and he said, hey, if I start doing that out, can you just remind me to bend my knees a little bit? And I tried to stay cognizant of it, but if I notice a photo in their gallery where his knees are locked out, I'm not going to deliver that, because I know he's not going to like it, and I definitely wouldn't share it, because then they wouldn't like it either. Yeah, that's a good question. I like that. Okay. Yeah, Andrea's going to pull from the review cards.
Oh, do I have everybody's? Okay, not. Did everybody get one? We're good? All good? I'm doing this?
Yeah, because I don't want to like look at if they say I was horrible, you know.
That's fair. It's 10. Good.
Okay.
It is Trey Davis.
It's me.
Yay! Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna give you a hug. I'm excited to work with you, and we'll chat after this. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Enjoy United. I appreciate it.